want to make sure that we can welcome everyone as we get started, and just say a few logistics before I hand it off. So first, I want to start with a welcome. My name is Kara. I'm a bookseller at Wild Rumpus Books in Minneapolis. And if you've never been to our store before, if you somehow came across this event online, that's wonderful. Welcome. We are a children's focused bookstore in Minneapolis, and we have lots of animals that live here in the store. So you might hear in the background a couple of our birds cooing. And then I also have just one cat friend on my lap. He's not very happy with me. This is Eartha Kitt.
Oh, that's good.
He'll be hanging out. You might see him in the background.
Just so you know, Stuart also coos at times.
I do.
The
When I'm
cooing
happy-
could be from Stuart. He has a history of cooing.
Don't be alarmed.
No, it's okay.
Right. If I get really upset, I have a distress call I make too. So
Okay.
hopefully that won't happen today. So.
Hopefully we don't need to do a rehearsal.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that everyone sees the links in the chat. So everyone who's joining us today, you get a 15% off code for your next purchase through Wild Rumpus. So make sure to grab that before you leave today. And then there's also a link right there to all of the books by James Ponti and Stuart Gibbs, are extremely creative and very prolific authors with us tonight. And the very best part is going to be that after the conversation, there will be a chance to ask questions for Stuart and James. So keep writing them in the Q&A box or in the chat as we're going through the event tonight, and there will be time for questions at the very end. So definitely ask everything that comes to your mind. So I will hand it over to our awesome authors, James Ponti and Stuart Gibbs. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, everyone.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It is wonderful to be here. Thank you so much. And Wild Rumpus is such a great store, and Minneapolis has been such a great place. Stuart and I have actually been there together before. I've come through a few times on different book tours, and it's just a great literary city, and a city that seems to really love kid lit. So that's wonderful for us. How you doing tonight, Stuart?
I'm doing very well. Congratulations to you on your book release yesterday, your book birthday, we like to call it. City Spies, Golden Gate, which I was lucky enough. I sometimes when your friends and your author pals, you get to read something a little early. So I was able to read that book last year at some point.
Well, and congratulations to you, because a couple hours ago we found New York Times bestseller list comes out, and Stuart is at number 5 this week with his new release.
Right.
Show us the Charlie Thorne book. Number 5 on the list.
Number 5.
So yeah. I personally think it should have been higher, but I'm thrilled for that. And that top 5 is huge. And so for those that don't know, or not, why would you know if you're not in our family? Stuart and I actually know each other pretty well. We're buddies. And so when the release of City Spies Golden Gate coming out, and we arranged for a book tour, and so a bookstore event, and I figured, well, no one wants to just hear me talk on and on and on and on. So why don't I call my buddy Stuart and let him talk on and on and on, and I can fawn on that, and that'll be great. So Stuart, thank you so much for being part of this tonight, and I'm so glad that our books come out so close together so that we can kind of celebrate them together.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame we cannot do the in-tour in person, because we had a great time when we were in Minneapolis last time. And I was going to say that Wild Rumpus, again, one of the most fun bookstores in the country, because I love animals. I love books. You combine them into, it's mostly books, but with a couple animals. And we were chatting right before, and I see, we didn't just come on, everybody. James, we were sort of doing a little pre-show here, and I discovered we sort of
well, you have to the backstory.
Having a story, right? That they have ferrets at Wild Rumpus, and when I visited Wild Rumpus, like on my very first book tour, somebody there told me that it was traditional to put a ferret on my head. I don't know if that's true or not, or if I was like, let's see if we can get an author to put a ferret on his head. But I did. Somewhere there's a picture of me with a ferret on my head at Wild Rumpus. But your ferret story is not so happy.
That led to, I'm so glad I don't know that, because I would have trouble in going to Wild Rumpus, because I had a traumatic experience with a ferret in middle school. We had a
I'm laughing hysterically.
I say it's traumatic, and your instant thing is to laugh. So ferrets like shiny objects, and I have big shiny eyes apparently because this ferret once leapt at me and clamped down on my eye. I don't know if the scars are still there, but there were 4 puncture holes on my eyelids, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and it just hung there. It's like in a movie, there was a ferret just attached to my head. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, and the owner is trying to pry the ferret off. So, Wild Rumpus, next time I'm there, if you try to do the ferret on the author's head thing, we're done. We are absolutely, totally done. I am terrified of them.
All right. You were at a friend's house. You were at a friend's house, and the ferret just had never
Actually, no, even worse. My mom invited this friend to live with us because his parents moved and needed a place to live. So the ferret lived with me for over a year and just stalked me all the time.
So it was like the first day the ferret went for your eyeball.
We're not going to spend the whole time.
I know, but I'm so fascinated. I read all these animal books, and I've never ever heard of somebody having a ferret latch on.
Well, it was traumatic.
And I'm actually
very traumatic.
We've known each other for 5 years, and
well, ferrets have not come up, oddly enough. I don't think it should be that. Only chickens.
I was just wondering, like, if I were to say, like, oh, so, like, I saw an armadillo the other day, would you be like, oh, I got an armadillo story about?
I don't have stories for every animal, but I have stories for a few. So we will just have to find those. Let's talk about books, since that's why people really came here. As fascinating as my middle school years are, mostly what I do with my tearful, scar-filled middle years is I turn them into fiction. So
So I have a phone ringing, which is
you didn't silence your phone, Stuart. If I was at your event, I would have silenced my phone.
Do you know what it is? I'm going to explain to the children out there. There's something called a landline, and nobody ever calls me on the landline except for like my parents. And
okay, we're fine.
Sorry.
You mute yourself or something. I don't know.
I know.
So the series I'm writing now is called City Spies. So City Spies. People in Minnesota might know me better from Framed.
That's a good series.
Framed was on the Maud Hart Lovelace list and last year, and so the Framed series is about 2 kids like Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. One named Florian Bates, his best friend Margaret, and they solve mysteries using TOAST, which stands for the Theory of All Small Things. But now the series that I write is City Spies. City Spies is the story of 5 kids from around the world who've all kind of fallen through the cracks of their cultures, and they end up getting adopted by this British spy who raises them as a family of spies. And the new book in that is City Spies Golden Gate. So City Spies came out in paperback a couple weeks ago. Get that. Love for you to get your hands on this. And there are in the side in the chat, I guess, coupons and whatnot. So that'll be great. But I really like writing spy stories. They're really fun. And it's one of the many things Stuart and I share in common. Stuart also writes mysteries and spy stories. Stuart, why don't you tell us a little bit about Charlie?
Well, okay, so Charlie here. This is relatively a new series. Like you, my second book just came out, so it wasn't even a series until last week ago, Tuesday. But in this, Charlie is the smartest person on earth, even though she's only 12, and because of her great intellect, she the government, actually the CIA, pulls her into helping hunt down something. These things that the greatest thinkers from all time, like Einstein and Darwin, have discovered and felt were too dangerous to trust with humanity. So these great thinkers have found things and hidden them away, but occasionally left clues to find them. And you don't want them to end up in the wrong hands. So CIA has brought Charlie in the first book in the series, which was Charlie Thorne and the Last Equation. It was a dangerous equation that Albert Einstein discovered, and in Charlie Thorne and the Lost City, this time Charlie Thorne is on the trail of something mysterious and dangerous that Charles Darwin discovered on his travels around the world on the HMS Beagle. So,
and my dog, after not eating all day, has decided this is the moment she's coming in to eat. So there's Lucy. All right. So all this talk of attack ferrets and whatnot. So when you write your spy stuff, I'm always curious, Stuart. What do you do for research?
Well, I would say that a lot of my spy stuff, like because I also did the Spy School series, which was very much based on me as a kid, like thinking it would be seeing my first James Bond movie and wanting to like go to a top secret spy school, learn how to be a spy. So my original spy research in my life was watching James Bond movies, really. And then just imagining how horribly wrong things would go if I was in the movie instead of James Bond, really. And so that was sort of the beginning. But if I like to go to the places I want to set my stories. So I like to visit a place and go around, and so spy stories often, as both of us have written stuff that takes place in Washington D.C. because that's sort of you with Florian Bates, who works for the FBI. I have Spy School that's connected to the CIA. Those are headquartered in Washington, so it makes sense that we would set some stories there. But I know in Washington, you have walked around Washington plenty of times, getting inspired to write your stories.
Well, I had a fluky thing recently, which was really pretty great. There is a librarian in Virginia whose husband is a high-ranking official in the CIA, like really high-ranking official in the CIA, and she really likes the books, and so she put me in touch with him. So I actually got to have a real CIA agent go over the plots and the missions, and it seems ridiculous, and it was so much fun. I felt like I was playing street football, and Vince Lombardi came to call the plays. All of a sudden, it's like a really official, formal play calling going on.
No, was there anything like you'd ask him, you'd be like, oh no, I can't talk about that.
He was pretty open, but I also didn't press. He brought up the ferret. He apparently knew about but the research is so important. I think, I feel like we're writing these stories with these kid spies. That already stretches the belief factor that the goal is then to make everything else so accurate and so realistic that hopefully by the end of the book they go, I don't believe there really could be a 12-year-old spy, but maybe there could.
Okay, did you ever get told something like that, like a real thing in the real world, and you were like, that's so crazy that everybody's going to think I made that up?
Yeah, well, there are parts in research, not anything that was told to me. There are parts in research that you come across real stuff and it's just that's unbelievable. The book I'm writing now, so not the book that just came out, takes place in London and Oxford and San Francisco, the primary thing. The next book takes place in Moscow and in Beijing. And talking about the surveillance state and those two things and what the cameras can find out, he did tell me about that, and it was terrifying. It was, artificial intelligence combined with cameras that they can track all kinds of stuff. So that was pretty amazing. But and it's hard because I can't, with COVID, we can't go to the places. Now you have been to Peru, right? You have been.
I had been down to Peru and Ecuador, to do research. This book is all through South America, and for the previous Charlie, I was able to go to Israel and do research for that one, almost as a fluke, really. I mean, I was working on the book and found out that there was a free author trip being run to Israel by a group called PJ Library that coincided exactly with when my in-laws were taking my kids for spring break, and I was like, I'm going to go on this trip. So
that's karma. That's that's good fortune coming your way.
Right. But now, when now you're trying to write without being able to go. Have you ever been to Moscow or Beijing?
I have not. My brother used to live in Moscow. He was a diplomat in the State Department.
Okay.
And so he put me in touch with people who grew up there and now live here. And so I've been using them a lot and some other sources. But for San Francisco, which is in this last book, luckily that was someplace I had been. So I was able to go and, I'd been there a number of times, and I don't know how you do it, but I took just hundreds of pictures at Alcatraz and Golden Gate and all that, and I just have them all over my computer. So when I'm writing, I pull up all the pictures relevant to the part that I'm writing, and that really helps. A really fun part of the research, though, for City Spies Golden Gate was I wanted the book to start with a really big action, exciting moment. So the first paragraph are hijackers crossing the deck of a marine research vessel in the North Sea. And so there's a hijacking of the ship. Now, I have been to the places in the book. I have never been on a marine research vessel in the North Sea. So I had to do some research on that. I tracked down the Oceanographic Institute, the Scripps Oceanographic Institute in San Diego, and they have the research vessel Sally Ride, which is, I think, maybe right now the cutting edge of marine research. And I tracked someone there, and I got a lot of basic how it works, how much crew, how big is the ship, what does it smell like, all that kind of feel stuff. And then once I had all the stuff I needed like that, I started pushing the envelope of questions because you don't want them to say, wait, this is ridiculous. And so finally I said, well, it's a kid, it starts off with a hijacking. And she's like, okay. And I said, and I need a really good place to hide. Do you have a really good place to hide on the ship? And I thought she would just kind of blow the question off. She said, oh, I have the best place. I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, sometimes we'll play a game when we have when we take one of these ships out, there's just 6 people on the ship just bringing it to a different location. And we play a game, we got to hunt each other down and find each other through the ship. She goes, the best place to hide of all is the stern thruster machine room, because it's this obscure little place down the, and so I have it, my character, well, it's a giveaway, but just don't tell the hijackers that, so that stuff gets to be really fun. That,
but see, that's right, because I mean, that's one of the things. Who would ever think that all the researchers would play sardines? I guess, is that what they're playing on
yes,
the?
I think something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Which is and right. And now, if you're ever on a research vessel that's either beset by terrorists or you're just playing sardines on it, now you know the best place to hide.
I am not kidding, and this is, I don't think, a good thing, but for much of my life I've had this paranoia. I think it goes back to when I was a kid. There was this movie called The Dobermans, where the Dobermans came and the night watchman Dobermans in the mall, and you had to, whenever I would go into a public bathroom, I always look for where to hide and escape. Like, you climb up on this thing and you go through the tile and you escape from the Dobermans or the terrorists or the bad guys. So I have been looking for places to hide my whole life. And I have the pretty situation. I mean, we could play a rapid fire game where you would say, where do you hide in?
All right, no, we're doing this right now. Okay, so right, okay, you're at a Waffle House.
A Waffle House.
Yeah.
Well, the Waffle House, you want to avoid, there's that only one entrance, and you can see the grill. So you want to stay away from the grill, but you go around the back, you go down underneath the grill, and then you slide the box of syrup in front of you.
Right, wait, okay, because I still want to do one more, but then I'm just wait. So the whole movie was just about Doberman, like it was like
it was not a movie. It was a series of 3 movies. The Amazing Dobermans. You'll look it up later. It was terrifying. It was Dobermans who were trained to commit crimes.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I'm a little bit older than you, so maybe your parents.
I feel like I'm just so shocked. Like, this whole day is like, what? How did I never know that this movie exists? It's so funny because you're also talking about this, and your dog is in the background, like, watching. Like, she's turned away now, but she was looking, and she was kind of like, Dobermans. Well,
yeah. So she knows.
We never discussed this. All right, I'm going to come up with one more. Suppose you're in the White House, which I know you researched, and the
White House, yes,
and the Dobermans come. Where's the best place to hide in the White House from a Doberman attack?
Well, the best place to hide in the White House is the sit room, the Situation Room, because it's so secure. But you can't get to it. I don't have the thumbprint or the retinal scan to get into it, so I'm going to have to freelance a little bit. And there is a hidden trap door in the Resolute desk. That's the desk of the Oval Office.
Okay.
And there's a door that was put in so that John Kennedy Jr. could play under the desk. I'm going there.
Okay.
So,
right.
We could do this all night. We won't.
I know. I'm not gonna keep pushing it, but I did not know this, but I think this is.
Vicente, you are right not to watch the Dobermans. All right. So what you wanted to talk about some new things tonight. What did you want to talk about?
Well, I mean, it sort of goes to the idea, like, we talked a lot about books, and I was saying that I was very inspired by the James Bond movies. Obviously, you were terrified by the Doberman movies, right? But I think a lot of kids do come to the world of spying through movies as well as books. And so I was just wondering, were you a fan of any particular spy movies as a kid, or are you inspired by them now?
The natural was James Bond, and I think maybe I saw the Flint movies when I was young.
Okay, all right, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Army
James
Flint.
Bond, right? Yeah.
It wasn't really a spy, but when I was a kid, Wild Wild West was kind of like a spy thing set in the Old West.
Okay, right.
So all of that costumes and daring and adventure were all part of the appeal. What about for you? What were the ones that launched it for you?
Yeah, I mean, because I was just I was like a huge James Bond fan, and what's interesting is to go back and look at like a lot of time when you see a movie as a kid and you're like, that was the most amazing movie ever, and then you see it as an adult and you kind of go like,
Yeah.
yeah. And there are a tremendous number of James Bond movies like that where you go back and but I think that there was this thing where even as a kid I was kind of aware that for all of the cool of James Bond, like there was this sort of off piece of it to me. Like, wait, why? Like, what kind of spy is just wearing like a three-piece suit all the time, and wandering around? Like, he was always like going around Jamaica or or like Rio or whatever, and he was the only guy in a suit, and I was just like, that just seems so impractical for a spy, and so I would already kind of be sort of poking some plot holes into things and saying like, well, like that'd be something if I wrote a spy thing I'd make fun of, or yeah.
I tried to do that too. I think that's a good instinct. The TV show Rockford Files was a favorite show of mine, and it was built the same way. It was built with the idea of detectives always do the brave, smart, gallant thing. So we're going to write a show about one who's the opposite. And I do try to find realism and poking fun at the elements like the tuxedo. There's a line in the first chapter of City Spice 3, the one that comes out that I'm writing right now. And one of the characters says to the other, your problem is that you think like being a spy is like being in an action movie. And he goes, then what is it like? She goes, it's like being in the cafeteria at school. And he goes, well, what makes you say that? And it's like basically you're just trying to blend in. You hope no one notices you, and the food is probably poison. And that's like the three-step, and so I am trying to write the cafeteria spy with fun action and with all that stuff in it. But one of the things I asked the guy from the CIA last week that it's funny you bring that up is I knew the reason he was willing to talk to me was because he wants these things to be accurate or good or whatever. And I said, what are the things you hate about spy movies? What are the things that drive you bananas when you're watching a spy movie? And he gave me 4 without hesitation and went off. And I thought, okay, these will be good tests. And I think both of us try to avoid these. One is the thought that some group like the CIA can do anything it wants, like it has all power. One is that everyone there is inept, which is not accurate. One is that everyone's rogue and there's no one looking to make them follow rules. And so those 3, I think both our books are good about. The last one, I don't think we can help him. He says, I'm an analyst. He goes, almost all the great works intelligence agencies do are by analysts. They're the tip of the spear. Every movie, every book is about someone in operations. And he goes, and the one time you have an analyst, you have Jack Ryan, and he becomes an action hero. So it is poking at that. It's kind of the fun.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, and I think we recognize that, right? For that so much of the analysts are doing great work, but it's not the most exciting. It's somebody going through papers, and maybe they get a paper cut at some point, something like that, and then they it's tough to make that one exciting, but you can hear something like that and sort of say, okay, well let's let's pay attention to that somehow, I'm sure, and twist it. It's funny because you with your first line, that was a lot of with spy school, right? I thought like before spy school, I'd had the idea for a long time, but I was so desperate to try and get it made as something, and I actually ended up selling a TV show that was a workplace comedy set at the CIA. And my argument was that it was just like everybody else's job. You had the exact same stuff. You had bosses that you didn't like, and you had busy work, and you had bad hours, and you had the food in the cafeteria was crummy. But on top of it all, maybe on occasion somebody tried to kill you. So it was actually like the worst job in the world.
The worst job ever. Yeah.
Right, yes.
All the bad parts, and then threatening life.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. I also asked about that movie Argo, and it's funny. He said it was great up until the last couple of minutes, and then, oh my goodness, what happened? And he's like, people, so it's funny to get, and I think that helps with the research and why people are willing to talk. I did For Trapped in the Frame series. It takes place in part at the Library of Congress, and they took me in. They let me see Thomas Jefferson's books and Abraham Lincoln's, the stuff from his pockets. They just wanted it to be accurate. People want, there are these great treasures and these institutions that really mean a lot, and it's easy to lose sight of what they're really about. So it's a fun part of our job, I think, that people are willing to share with us.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. No. It's people. Well, people love to talk about what they do, and they have these cool jobs. And then, but like because I wanted to get into the West Wing at some point, and I couldn't. I was trying everything I could to get into the White House, and I couldn't end up doing it. So I called friends who'd been in the West Wing, and they sort of described it to me. But then I was talking at a bookstore in Washington, D.C., and I started talking about how I couldn't get into the White House. And the guy walks up at the end with this kid, and he gives me his card. He says, "I really wish you'd called us." And he's Secret Service. And I was like, I thought for the life of me, you tried to keep people out of the White House. And he was like, "Well, next time you're in town, let me know." And,
and if you want to stay longer, I've already told you where to hide. Right? So if you can get in there, hide in the Resolute desk,
right.
Spend a little time, wait for the Dobermans to go, and you're set.
Right, exactly.
We're all safe.
I love the fact that there's some, they're all, all the generals and the president are in the Situation Room, like there are Dobermans out roaming the halls. Thank God we had the retinal scan to get
the Isle of Dogs. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So
right.
So you have multiple series going. You've got Fun Jungle, which is great with Teddy. You got Spy School, and then you've got Charlie Thorne. How hard is it? Like, do you ever have ideas that start you thinking it's going to be one, and then it jumps to one of the other series?
Yeah. I mean, I like Okay, so I'm doing Charlie Thorne, and I'm trying to come up with these great iconic people from history. And I was once again in Washington, and ended up going to the Mount Vernon, which is where George Washington lived, and finding out that George Washington was our first spy master. And so I was really like, oh, George Washington would be this great sort of iconic person for Charlie Thorne. But the more I thought, oh, but he was a spy master, so suddenly that became more of a spy school sort of thing. And I did the thing in spy school where I tied it into somebody from the past, which was like my Charlie Thorne thing. But yeah, I don't know. Have you? Well, because you were doing Framed, and now
I've done this series more back to back, so I haven't ever overlapped. So that hasn't been an issue. I still hope to write at least one or two more Framed, but the idea is, it's funny how you say you start. For me, the City Spies, it's always built on a big mission at the end to a big city with iconic architecture and whatnot. And I find that you're starting with the famous person.
Right.
I'm trying to find what's a really fun city to go to that would be great for the characters, and then what mystery fits that city, right? And so I've been doing that lately, and I'm writing 3 right now, but in my head I'm already starting to do the initial thinking about 4, and I'm trying to think, well, what city should I be?
But look, I mean, I have done it the other way. My family and I were on, have been on. Now my kids are old enough. Like if we're on vacation someplace, my kids could say like, "Hey, why don't we do an action sequence here?" And so we were actually we went to London, and there was so much of my kids like running around being like, "Oh, there should be an action sequence," and then we went to Paris, and we spent like a whole day on the Eiffel Tower working out an action sequence, and I was like, oh, I wanted to do a book set in London, but I guess I've got to get them to Paris by the end of it so that I can use this. And so there's definitely something that way. It is a shame that we cannot go to these places right now.
It is. But it is amazing how much we can without leaving our offices, our homes. with Google Maps and videos and YouTube and people who, like I said, people who've lived in them and are willing to talk and share. So I you know, do you do the thing ever where you get on the Google map and you walk down the
Oh,
street
oh yeah. Oh
to
no.
see? Yeah,
I would
I
say
do it till I get dizzy.
Charlie Thorne 3 has an opening sequence in Cairo, and I've never been to Cairo before, and I spent so much time on Google Maps figuring out places and walking around, and you can do it. I don't know how Agatha Christie ever wrote anything without Google Maps. I don't.
One of the things that I think would maybe surprise people, it's kind of funny, is there have been a number of times, because the genres that we write overlap, where we've actually checked out with each other. It's like, hey, have you done something like Cairo is in the running for book 4 for me, and so I'm going to have to make sure once I get to read 3, your 3, that I'm not stepping on that. Right. But it's happened more than once that we've had overlap in our story.
No, we've had some weird ones, like right. I mean, and you're the only person I have to we have to pre-read each other's stuff to say, so right. So there was once a code that I thought I'd brilliantly come up with, but you were already kind of using it. And then
the periodic table, was that the periodic table?
But it was the train had left the station.
No, you had to use it. You used it different than I did. Yeah.
But then one of the was that both of us, right? We both wrote something set in the White House and picked the exact same Secret Service code name for the child of the president.
Yes, Loki, right?
Loki, right? Yes, and yours was more integral to your plot, so I changed mine.
Thank you.
Right. Well, it wasn't for me. It was no big deal. I can't actually remember what I changed it to, but yeah, it was just surprising that we would both pick the exact same. I guess you could say either Norse mythology or Marvel.
Or Marvel. It was a little bit of both. Right. And was there something else you wanted to? You had. I think I interrupted you at one point.
Oh no, I was thinking that those are the two major ones. I mean, I know but it's great because you've sent me codes. You sent me the new code for
which I love
for which is great. And so James has this new code in City Spies 3, which is so intricate that I was like, I can't believe James would even think that I could have possibly thought of this code at all.
On my call with the CIA, I dropped that one. I wanted to say, here you go, in case you need this in an actual real life op. This is the code that I came up with. It totally works. Right. And he liked it, and he couldn't say it, but he said, that's pretty good. Right. So I mean, but that's 3. That's a year away.
I know. I'm not going to give it away. But
if you look at Charlie Thorne 2 and City Spies 2, and Charlie Thorne 1 and City Spies 1.
Well, okay, but this was something else I wanted to talk, because both of us, right? We certainly like codes, and we like coming up with which is for me one of the most difficult parts of the whole book, because you're not actually writing now. You've got to think kind of a different way. So, do you do research on codes? Do you like you just walking down the street?
I just try to come up with different things. Like you get an entry point. Like, I thought it probably similar to you, came up with the periodic table code based on the idea that, oh, wow, for me, a really good code exists if it actually is 2 codes that bump up to each other. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but the periodic table is in and of itself a code. And the key to that code is up in every science classroom in the country, pretty much, and it's numbers and letters that stand for something else, but the numbers correspond with the letters. So then I thought, well, that's already a code. So if I can come up with a code that something goes to numbers, then those numbers match those numbers, which match those letters. So now you have 2 codes running, and that's what I try to do. And so I look for things that have built-in codes with them as a starting point.
I mean, well, I'll say I might have come up with my periodic table code when I was bored in chemistry class in high school.
That's probably where a lot of our stuff comes from.
Right. Yeah, but I do research on them because I like to find. So right, the one I use in this book, I did not come up with myself. I found I found it historically listed, and I thought, oh, I could use that. But I had it. But I'm doing Charlie 3, and I had to come up with my own code. and a new one, and it was a bear. It really, like, I had to do so much research to figure out this whole thing.
Better a bear than a ferret. That's what they
Yes,
say.
yes, well, I know, nobody has.
That's a common saying.
Choice
It's a
between
common
getting
saying
attacked by
from the
a
old
bear
West.
and a ferret.
Better a bear than a ferret.
Which is funny you should mention the bear, right?
Oh, look at that.
Look at
Look at that. Wow.
The 11th, bare bottom, right? I did some research on that too. I spent a lot of time doing research on bears. Yes.
So the last a year ago, a couple days ago, we were at North Texas Teen Book Festival together.
Right.
And that was the beginning of my book tour for City Spies. And I was most of the way through it when all of a sudden the world shuts down and quarantine happens and we all fly back and we don't get to see each other and we don't get to see the readers in person. And I'm wondering from you, what have been, I mean, we all know the hardships of COVID and but what have been kind of the discoveries that you've made about what we're doing with writing during this time?
Well, I mean, well, one thing was we luckily had jobs that were sort of COVID. Like I was supposed to, I mean, I was supposed to be doing a lot of travel that I was hoping was going to inspire some stuff, and I couldn't, but I was able to do a lot of writing. But I do think, like, I mean, if you think about it now, you're in Orlando, I'm in Los Angeles. We're doing something with a bookstore in Minneapolis, and people from anywhere in the world can tune in. I'm
That's
sure
pretty amazing.
People all over, which is great. And I don't know that you know, it would be lovely to be able to do things in person again. But the fact that this now exists, I think this is here to stay. I think we are going to be able to do things like this. So how about
we don't get to see any of our writer friends in person, but actually I think maybe we see them through a screen more often than we ever saw them, which is kind of nice. And we get together and you can touch base with, you know, for me, one of the things that really was telling is, so up until 5 months ago, I've always worked in television primarily, and I've written books at night and on the weekend. And there's a part of me that as I was heading towards the world of books, the people I knew in television are like, you realize you're going the wrong direction, right? That books are on their way out. They're over. They're done. That television is the future. And boy, have we seen during this year that books are in so many ways the resilient entertainment storytelling feature. You know, it's that when we can't go anywhere, right, we can go somewhere in a book. And I think that's been a great lesson in a very positive way, is that we realize that the books are still special to people.
Yeah, no, I look, it's I've read a lot of books. All right, have you read a lot? All right, my kids are.
I'm not as good a reader as you are. I'm struggling. When I finished this book, when I finished writing City Spies 3, my plan is actually to do nothing for a few weeks other than read, just to kind of cleanse the mental palate, and you know, and I want to read as many Stuart Gibbs books. Like, the problem with Stuart is he writes so many. And between Stuart and Chris Gravenstein, there's like, you know, if you don't read for a couple weeks, you're behind a couple books.
Gravenstein, I think, has 8 books out this year. Is that possible?
He told me he averages 6 a year.
Right.
That's
unbelievable.
unbelievable.
I don't know what's going on like this.
Yeah.
This is Chris Gravenstein getting writer's block. Okay, and then you just. Right. That's
JJ, I have writer's block.
Oh no, it's gone. All right, don't worry about it.
There we go. There we go.
I actually, Gravenstein's watching right now, going, "What is this writer's block? I've never even heard of this thing." That's
Is that a street where they all live?
I think we're going to take some questions.
Yeah, I think is Tara going to come back on with us?
Right. But I had one last question.
Oh, wait.
You, have you?
Tara, stay on, Tara.
Oh, no, you can stay on, Tara. You can stay on. That's okay. I was just, besides a ferret, have you been attacked by any other animal at all?
Off the top of my head, you know, so my mom used to do this. I grew up by the beach, and we would go crabbing. So the way you go crabbing is you go to the grocery store, you get chicken
Chicken
and
necks. Yeah, chicken necks.
chicken necks, and you put on a string and you stand on the rocks. And there was a time, it seems like, when the bucket of crabs in the backseat of the car tipped over, and there were crabs everywhere in our car, clawing at people and things. So I wasn't directly attacked, but I was not sure how to remedy the situation. You're gonna be what? Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I'm not gonna be, but actually, it's
Stuart,
pretty.
have you ever been attacked by an animal?
I have. Wait, well, I have a crab story because I went to college, and I used to go crabbing too as a kid in Texas, and so I grew up eating crabs, and so I got to college in Philadelphia, and I found out nobody had ever had a crab before. So I was like, oh, we're gonna go to this Italian market.
How? It's right by Maryland.
I have no idea. I know it was shocking. Like, I was with this group of people, and so I said we're all gonna go to the Italian market and buy crabs, but we had to go on the bus, and so they sold the crabs in a paper bag with an ice in it, and then sort of riding the bus back, and all of a sudden, like, the bottom drops out of the bag, and crabs just go everywhere on the bus, which I think a lot of people on the bus had never seen a crab before. They just thought
certainly they've never seen one on a bus before.
No, so I'm sure all the kids have seen Annie Hall, with the scene with which I'm being facetious, where there's a scene where Woody Allen's like, they're trying to make lobsters, and it was like, right, it was like, imagine crustaceans getting loose on a bus, and it was just full out panic. People were absolutely terrified, and right, if there had been a Resolute desk, people would have been hiding under it. So that was not really me being attacked. That was me accidentally starting a plague of crabs.
There we go. But have you ever been attacked, or
I've been attacked by I was actually in Africa once, and an elephant charged my the safari vehicle, and I was taking pictures, so I was kind of like, oh wow, this is great, like, I'm getting this great clothes, and then suddenly I was like, oh wait, the elephant's like coming really fast, and then there's like this gap in my memory, like, all of a sudden, like, I'm hiding underneath the seat in the back of, like, I was sitting on top of the thing, and then I was just magically hiding and tucked into a ball in the back with my friends. We're all just right, and
so like me in a Waffle House bathroom, you had figured out the escape route at the beginning, and the flight mechanism in your brain takes over. That's great.
Right. It was you're kind of like, wow, we're not cool at all. Like our thing was just to hide in the bottom of the car and let the guy back the car up as fast as he could across the savannah.
Cool is not a word that describes middle grade fiction authors. I think that with the exception of, like, maybe Jeff Zentner, but he's really more young adult. Jason Reynolds is cool.
Yeah.
But Jason's like the coolest person I've ever met in my life. Yeah. But he took all our cool.
Right. He bites the ferrets.
And then stitches it up, right?
Right, yeah.
And so then, no, cool is not our thing, but that's all right, because
I should say,
right about not being cool.
I'm joking around. I'm not accusing Jason Reynolds of ferret biting. I'm not saying
I don't think anyone thought you did, Stuart.
I know. I'm just making it clear.
Stop.
Just making it clear. Okay. All right. Right.
All right. Kara, how are you?
Doing fabulously. I haven't stopped giggling. So.
Oh, good. Okay. Well,
I love the hiding game. That sounds like.
You have a place you want to throw at me? I'll tell you. I mean, this is how scared I was as a child. Is that I had to find escape hiding routes everywhere. And it was also the imagination. It was like always like, well, what would happen if? What would happen if? And how would you go? And it comes in handy when you write spy fiction.
Exactly. How about in a double-decker bus?
Double-decker bus. Well, now the double-decker bus is, I've just written about one. We're gonna segue off of that. Do you know that James Bond is named after a double-decker bus? Did you know that, Stuart?
Wait, what?
Okay, I'll get to that after the hiding. That's called a tease, people.
Wait, James Bond was named after an ornithologist.
Oh, you know what? You think you know everything, Stuart. And yes, he was partially named after. But so when this is part of the same chapter, because funny enough, the action adventure line for the beginning of City Spice 3 is on a double-decker bus, and one of the characters tells the story of when Ian Fleming was writing the original James Bond story, he had moved outside of London to Kent. He lived in Kent. And to get into London every day when he'd go for meetings, he took the bus, and the bus he took was bus 007. And
Oh.
so the James Bond, the name is from the ornithologist about birds of the Caribbean. James Bond 007 is the bus. And the problem with the bus is there's not a good hiding place because it's a loop. So what you do on the bus is slightly different. You go up the stairs, you come around, and then you go out the back. And so they're guided, it's the two exits, unlike the American buses. So you hide in the street and let the bus go away from you. Take the trouble.
And as you run around the bus, what's actually neat about a London Double is as you chase around, you run around really quickly. It plays the Benny Hill music as you.
It plays everywhere in England. That's the thing. All right. So, Kara, what questions do we have?
Yes, we have a lot of questions, so we might not be able to get to them all, but we can jump right on in. Let's see. How about someone in the audience was wondering if either one of you has a favorite character that you have created. I know that is a very challenging question, most likely.
Oh, I was almost going to say it almost be fun to name the character because I was thinking I just love Brooklyn in
yeah, what's your favorite characters in each other's books?
I know it's supposed to be mine, but I'm naming my favorite character that you created.
Yeah. So why Brooklyn? Brooklyn is the protagonist in City Spies. Each of the books changes who the protagonist is, but yeah.
I think she's so sassy. Actually, and now I'm saying that, but I like Sydney too, because Sydney's got a little rebellious streak in her, and she gets more time in City Spies too. But no, because Brooklyn's like one of those super smart kids, and she sort of has these great skills that she then she doubts herself a little bit, but then they come through at the end, and she does these great things in City Spies where she, they think she's kind of a rube, and then she turns it on them and proves that she's, just as good as they are. So that's, I really like her.
I am a big fan of Miss Hale. That's, I think of this, Ben's great, but, and I just blanked on her first name. I can't believe it. Erica. Oh, because Erica is the end of America. How can I forget that? Which is why she's Erica. I just like her combination of things. Okay. And, I love the way that he thinks of her, and she has all the skills that the aspirational kind of dynamic. All your books though are super fun. So it's hard to pick one. So not, from a favorite character though, I think the characters that move to favorite in my own stuff are often the small minor characters who you initially plan that they're just there to help with a plot problem for one chapter, and then you like them, and suddenly they keep cropping up. I don't know if you've had any of those.
I've had. I mean, like I'll say in the Spy School series, I created Zoe and Warren, and they were very minor in the first book, and then they sort of kept on going. Which is always fun. I like all my leads, but maybe I don't know. I thought one of the most fun characters I ever created was Ashley Sparks, because it was an evil spy school, and I was trying to figure out how somebody would become what kid becomes evil. And I'm watching the Summer Olympics, I'm watching the gymnastics, and I think, oh, I know who becomes evil. The kid who misses the cutoff for the 5 people on the Olympic team by 100th of a 100,000th of a point. Right. I thought that kid has worked their whole life to become a gymnast, and then they turn evil like that. That was so.
In the James Bond movies, I really loved when M became Judi Dench. When Judi Dench played M. Right. And I thought, I want a woman in power in my MI6. And I remember reading about an American spy named Virginia Hale, who had Virginia Hale she lost half of one of her legs. And she was really tall. She was 6 foot tall, and she had a limp, and yet she was one of the most effective spies in World War II. And I blended those characters together to make my MI6 higher up, True, whose name is Gertrude, but she goes by True. And she's, I think, the most fun for me to write. I love to write her chapters. All right. Very long answer there. Sorry about that.
I love hearing that the secondary characters take on a life of their own. That's great. So we do have quite a few questions that are all kind of about writing. So I'm going to kind of group them all together.
Okay.
How long have you all been writing? what does your writing process look like, and where do you get your inspiration? Grab onto whatever part of that question seems appealing.
Mr. Gibbs.
Well, you and I are both big plotters. Which is not, like, we should point out that not everybody writes the same way, but you and I do a lot of research and a lot of planning ahead of time before we start writing.
You do a lot more than me. I think you always think I'm more of a plotter than I am. I don't have an outline for the whole story, and
What?
you do.
Oh,
I know.
wow! I didn't
Every
realize.
time I tell you that, you have that
Because like it can't be true. Wait, but you know who when you do your mysteries, you know how they committed who committed the crime. You know how they committed the crime, right? In the Frame series.
I know the end. So I know the city where you start the trip, and I know it's a trip from Minnesota or from Minneapolis to Chicago, but I don't know how we're getting there.
Oh.
Right? Does that make sense?
Right.
So I know you end up in Chicago, but you might take different highways, different roads, different whatever.
All right. Well, then I plot more than James does. I will say this: I do leave things open. I don't say like, okay, I know every little iota of everything, because I like to get to points and be like, oh, hey, that would work. But I have a very good idea of where my characters are.
And that's it. I do have a good idea of the ending, and then I plot in sections. So like when I'm writing the 5 chapters that all take place on the North Sea, at a certain point, I'll run through all of that and I'll make a timeline to make sure I get it right. And then once I'm through that, then I know where I'm at. And so, okay, now the next part, I'm going to do it. So I don't write blindly on the page, but I do like to leave a lot of freedom for things you discover along the way, I guess is what I say. Yeah. I think both an interesting thing, I actually wrote about this yesterday in Nerdy Book Club, which I'm sure these kids don't, your viewers don't want to read.
I read it.
It's about that both of us are a part of a group of which, off the top of my head, I came up with 6 or 7 authors who started writing scripts before they wrote books. And I think that slave to structure is key to me, that structure that's so important in film. And I do use cards. So do I have my cards here? Like this is book 3 of City Spies. And I have these cards, and when I have ideas, I write them down on the card, and then I fill the floor with them, and I move them around to find the right order, and then take pictures when I get it right. So thwart Reg, that's a thing. And the Bolshois reappear, that's a thing. So that's kind of old TV writing, film writing technique, is to have cards on a wall.
Right, that's very TV. But yeah, I mean, the kids should know, right? Like when you're writing a TV show, you have to outline it.
There's no way not to, right?
They make you turn in your outline. It's like being in school. They're like, where's your outline? Do you have it? And then you're like, oh, yes, I did it. Here it is. Can I write it now?
There's no pantsers in television, right? Because that's the term they use: plotters and pantsers. And pantsers right by the seat of their pants, and plotters plot out. And I'm a plantser. I guess is what I am. All right, Kara, what do we got next?
Relatedly, which other authors have inspired you most in your writing process?
Are you pointing at me?
I'm pointing at you on my screen. I don't know where.
It's pointing off your. Really? Me?
You inspired me a great deal. You inspired me to want to do multiple series.
Okay.
I mean, that's an honest truth. I thought, Stuart, I love the way he's doing this, and I love that. And I love the way the series kind of fit in the same universe. I have this thing in my head called the Pontiverse, where all the books that I write exist in this other world. But Stuart is definitely an influential writer for me. As a kid, the one was E.L. Konigsberg, who wrote for the Mixed Up Files, and this is basically Frank Weiler, is my all-time favorite book, other than the ones that Stuart and I have written.
No, you're right. You don't have to say right.
Yeah, and
I'll hold up that one right there, The Westing Game by Alan Raskin.
Oh, The Westing Game, yeah. I can't admit this. I haven't read that. Everyone says the Westing Game is the key book, and so I need to read it.
You're not the only one to say makes actually because we talk. There's a similar. Well, I read them both when I was a kid, and there's a moment in Mixed Up Files. There's a couple moments in Westing Game where something was revealed, and you go, oh, and I remember it from when I was a kid. I remember the moment it's revealed in Mixed Up Files, and I like it was yesterday. It's like it's my own, like I was there, like it was happening to me in real life, but I was just reading it, and that's one of these super special things that reading a mystery can do.
That's what I love about mystery. And I think the mystery is the most interactive book most books you're supposed to observe and be part of in the side of the room. And the mystery from the very beginning, it's like, I'm going to give you the clues. You got to figure it out. And that's really fun to write and read.
Awesome. Okay, so I think this will be our last kind of series of questions. They're a little bit similar, so I'm going to tell them at the same time.
They involve Dobermans? Because I need to be
Under the
prepared.
desk.
They're a bit of a trigger for me.
No more Dobermans. So these questions are: first, would you ever consider writing a book together with protagonists that work against each other?
Whoa, okay.
And a second set of
That's
questions.
not one of our editors, just so we know.
Do you think you could work together? Do you think you could write a book together?
You know, it's interesting because I get asked by people like on my website and everything. I get asked more about writing with James than anybody else, and I don't know if we put out that we're friends and that that we're always talking each other's stuff over. Which I think we could do something together, but it's difficult. It's actually, you know, like from a business standpoint, it's like James has his series and I have my series, and we're going off doing this, and then we combine them, and then we've only got one series, and but that's the first time anybody's ever said, would we have our protagonists work at cross purposes?
That's kind of an interesting tweak on it.
Usually they want them to team up.
Yeah, you know, I could see working with Stuart on a TV show in a second. I could write a movie with Stuart in a second. You know, the other thing about books, and I know there are some great teams out there that write books together, but the truth is, part of the reason, after years of sharing that, which was so much fun on TV, it's nice to just get to make up, you know, the stuff. I would love, though, to have Ben jump into a City Spies. You know, I don't, you know, just as a guest star or something like that. But
and I'm gonna be totally honest, I balked at the idea of being in a writer's room in television in Hollywood the whole time because I was like, I don't play well with others.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
There you go.
So, which doesn't mean I can't. I have collaborated with people, but it's really got to be the right person, the right project, and we got to just be like, boom, hey, we've got this, and this would be really great. And it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
You said there was a series of questions. What's the...
Yes. So this is the last one to kind of bring it home to Minneapolis. So, series of questions. Are either of you baseball fans? Do you think in the future you will write baseball themed mysteries or one based in Minneapolis? It seems there's some hope in this question.
Or a baseball theme, Twins mystery. We're both baseball fans.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Wait, James is going to the.
Oh.
It's going over to, like, honestly, kids, just like James is wearing a button-down shirt instead of a Boston Red Sox shirt. It's like rare. It's like seeing a solar eclipse right now for me. I first of all, I'm. Oh, what is that?
A Louisville Slugger with my name on it.
Oh yeah.
This is my Jackie Robinson McFarlane figure. Jackie Robinson is my hero.
Amazing.
This is my actual Jackie Robinson baseball card that I keep for inspiration.
Right.
A Lou Gehrig baseball card that I keep for inspiration.
Oh my goodness.
This is the ball I threw out for the first pitch in a minor league baseball game. It was terrible. I was terrible. This is actually, I never buy this kind of stuff for myself. This is the ball that was used in a game at Fenway Park, which means that clay is Fenway Park. And every now and then when I need a new idea, I'll just hold it. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit of a baseball fan, and I was terrible at it. I love playing sports, and by far it was my worst sport to play. I just could never get the hang of it, but it is great fun. This is another ball from a show I worked on, and we all signed it at the end. Yeah.
This is the only ball I ever caught in a baseball game.
Oh, I've never done that. Now I'm jealous.
That's Bill Miller from the Red Sox.
You're
this one up.
really?
Actually, well, I would tell you this. I caught this. I went to Fenway with my son when he was very young, and we were taking the tour of the park before the game. the owner might have gotten us in, and during batting practice, we're up on top of the green monster, and Vladimir Guerrero hit this ball. They came up, and I went to catch it, and I was like 2 inches short, and it clanged off the railing and ricocheted and hit my son in the head. And so all I know is like I'm there. It's like going to be the greatest day ever. And so like boom, he's down, and so he got that. But then we actually held on to the ball and got Dustin Pedroia to sign it for him later on in the day. So all this going to say, I am totally into the idea of doing something at a stadium involving sports, involving baseball. It hasn't come up yet, which is kind of surprising. I've had this gag in my head forever that about doing like an action sequence at a baseball stadium. It works so much better in a movie or instead of a book, where like the hero's like, aha, we ditched the bad guys, we're safe, and then suddenly they get put up on the jumbotron.
Oh, there you go.
They're like, oh, they're right over there, and then they're like, God dang it. Yeah. So I am. It's just like sometimes having the right idea and how it would work out.
In Vanished, which was the second framed book, it involved an international defection, and originally it was a Cuban baseball player at a Washington Nationals game. So yeah, I have thought about it. I keep wanting to write a Fenway Park thing just so I can have a chance to research and go inside the Green Monster. So that's but if you want a twin story, we can certainly work on a twin story.
Twin Cities have got some great stuff. It's just you're right. Sometimes it's just hitting on what takes you there.
When I was a kid, my first signed baseball, which was a huge deal for me, was Rod Carew, who was the star player for the Twins, and I've always had a fondness for the team in my heart because of that.
I was like, it doesn't happen that often, but I do. Like when we do tour, I did try to make sure that I would have a book come out in April or October. So I was either the beginning of the baseball season, the end of the baseball season. So if you ended up in a town at the right time, you got to go. But it lines up so poorly. And I believe one time I was in Minneapolis and like the Twins were in the playoffs and I couldn't go to the game because I had to do some.
Well, even worse, if you remember, Stuart, the first night that Stuart and I were on tour together, we were in Chicago.
Oh, right.
And the Cubs were playing in the World Series for the first time in decades. No one came. No
Right.
one came to the
Really?
game. Because even the people that weren't at the game watching the game, we're like, this is the worst planning.
Actually, like the 8 people who didn't care came to our.
They had a great time, and we had cake.
I know.
So there was plenty of cake left over.
You're really like right. We do know enough to like sort of like pay attention and go like, oh man, this is not.
The cards are stacked against you.
So you didn't have to feel bad about it. Sometimes you do those events, you feel bad, but we felt no guilt that people they've been waiting their lifetime for that. So
one of the first events I ever did, actually, the Timberwolves were in, not the Timberwolves, oh my God, the hockey. Who's the
Wild?
The Wild were in the playoffs. And at least I got to go to the stadium beforehand and get a bunch of signed stuff from like old players. But I did an event and I was like, yeah, nobody's gonna be.
So bring us back to Wild Rumpus with the Twins homestand and
right yeah.
No ferrets though.
Right. No ferrets, no Dobermans. We'll keep our eyes out for the next baseball themed book from one of you two. Hopefully, inspiration strikes.
All right.
Well, before we wrap up, I want to make sure that everyone hears. There was a lot of comments in the chat about getting a signed book, and I want to make sure that everyone knows that we do have signed book plates from James Ponti. So any James Ponti book that you buy from us it'll be essentially a signed book with a book plate inside. So
I can get some to you if you need them. Yes.
Awesome. We would love that. Yes. So. That sounds like we will likely have Stuart Gibbs book plates also.
He's good on that. He follows through on that stuff. He doesn't say it.
We trust you.
I have one more letter in my name than James does, but I can sign pretty quickly.
You counted our name letters?
So I can't everybody's name letters because
best friends do.
Because like no, because our friend like Christina Sundornvat, I'm like, oh my God, like you're signing your
CS.
forever,
You
right?
know, she just goes CS line.
Right.
That's all she can do.
So I'm very attuned to how many letters are in everybody because I'm like, yeah. Man,
Speaking of baseball, Jim Rice. So on baseball, Jim Rice, 7 letters, was on the same team as Carl Yastrzemski.
Right.
So just think of the signing advantage Jim Rice had. So yeah. Well, thank you, Kara and Wild Rumpus, for having us, and Stuart for being part of this. It means the world to me. Thank you all for watching and being part of it. Did you have more bookkeeping? I'm sorry, Kara, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, absolutely. I'm just so grateful. I had such a blast listening to you all, and I'm really hoping that everyone in the audience did too. We had lots and lots of comments and questions and excitement.
I'm sorry we did not get to everybody's questions. I've got a frequently asked questions page on my website. If you still got questions, I don't know, James, you can just come to his house and he'll answer.
I have a frequently asked question, but they're actually not that frequently asked. They're just things that I want to talk about. So I asked on my frequently asked questions is a question. When you were a child, did you ever hold a live bear as part of an Italian circus? And the answer is yes. Oh. So we're going back full circle. Bears, better bears than ferrets. Better bears than, but I did. And there's a picture of me, which was, it was a, no, I'm sorry, I said a bear, it's a lion. I'm holding a lion, but we have lion down, right? I have lion down.
Yeah, wait a minute. Did you get a bear and a lion confused?
I got my memory confused because the bears were on my mind. It was a lion. There was this belief in Italy, again, I was born in Italy, that's all, you're looking for lion down?
Okay, yeah,
because I got it over here if you don't. That if a young boy held a lion, he grew up to be brave. And so there's a picture of me terrified holding a lion. And I did not grow up to be brave. So
do you have a story with the Tyrannosaur?
No. Oh, now
you ever attacked by a Tyrannosaur? Or
if we're going to show your bookstore, we're going to need to book an extra half hour at least just to get through them. You're at what? You're at 8 spy schools, 6 fun jungles, 2 Charlies, 3 Moonbase Alphas. Is that right?
Right. Yes.
How many Lost Musketeers? Just 1?
3.
Right. Holy cow, that's so many. So you could read all of Stuart's books, which would be good, but would be exhausting. Or you could read my much more manageable number of 8. That's 3 Dead Cities, 3 Framed, 2 City Spies, and you will feel so good about yourself. You will have read the entire
and the whole oeuvre of
the oeuvre of the James Ponti books will be taken care of. So there you go.
Everyone has their reading cut out for them.
Start small and work your way up.
There is. And then if you're
really one day you can read all the works of Gordon Corman. Yes, exactly. There you go. You can read all the books that Chris Grabenstein wrote this year.
Well, this has been so wonderful. Thank you both so much. It's just been an absolute blast. And thank you everyone for joining. We hope to see you again at one of our events.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
We'd love to be back at them.
All right.
Perfect. Have a good night, everyone.